Hey there, let me ask you something. Do you think that this ball is moving right now? Well, I guess there's just only one way to find out. So, is the ball moving right now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Alright, so is it moving?
Yeah, it's moving.
Well, the common idea of most people was that yes, the ball was moving, but that isn't necessarily true. Wait a second. What? Yeah, the ball need not be moving right now. So, to explain why don't I ask you another question? Why do you think that the ball is moving in the first place? So, why do you think so?
Because it's moving in translating motion. I think so.
Well, I think so because there's a movement from point A to point B, so there's movement.
Some had the right idea when they said that the ball was moving from some point A to some point B. But then I never specified with which point I was talking about in the first place. So what if I were to ask with respect to a point on the ball itself? Then would the ball be considered moving? Well, that gives a confusion as to how you can name points, because if I were to start naming this point A and that point B, then I just couldn't possibly name every single point in space like A, B and C and all that. So the solution to a problem like that is to follow some sort of a method to describe or specify any particular point in space, and without any confusion, because I can't have two points having the same name. Like if I call this point A and that point A, then we would have a confusion as to what point A is. So such a thing is called following a coordinate system. And the solution for that was solidified by a French mathematician called René Descartes in the 17th century. And that gave rise to the Cartesian Coordinate System, which is still being used as one of the basic ways to specify any particular point in space without any confusion. To know how the Cartesian Coordinate System works, first we need to know these following basic ideas. Let's keep these three parameters, height, width, and depth here, and look at certain things. First, we have a point. A point has no height, no width, nor does it have any depth. So it has 0 dimensions of length. Now, if we arrange a lot of these points together side by side in a straight manner, we get a line. And the distance between any 2 points on this line can be measured. In this case, it's the width alone that exists, so a line has 1 dimension of length. Now, if we arrange a lot of these lines closely together, we get a plane or a surface, and in this case, this plane would have a width and a height, so a plane has 2 dimensions of length. Now, taking multiple planes arranged one below the other, we get a volume, which has all 3 height, width as well as depth. So a set of planes or a volume has 3 dimensions of length. So we started off with a point. So let's just call this point O for origin, and a collection of points gives us a line, and the location of any other point on this line can be told by finding out how far away from this reference point O it exists by specifying a scale of measurement along that line, where points to the right of the origin are considered positive and those to the left are considered negative, just to specify the direction in which we must travel to reach that point. So let's just call this line the x-axis. A collection of lines gave us a plane. So how do you describe the location of any point on the plane? Well, first we find the distance of the line that's parallel to the x-axis from the x-axis itself by using another line that's perpendicular to the x-axis. Let's call this new white line as the y-axis. After finding that line, we find how far along the x-axis we must travel to reach that exact location of the point. Taking this further, what happens in a 3-dimensional space? Well, we construct yet another line that's perpendicular to both the x and y axes and call it the z-axis. So the z-axis is perpendicular to the plane that contains the x and y axes. So to determine the location of any point in the 3-dimensional space that we live in, we first find the distance along the z-axis of the plane containing the point, which is parallel to the xy plane, and then in that plane we find the distance along the y-axis of the line containing the point which is parallel to the x-axis, and then in that line we find the distance along the x-axis of the point, all distances measured from the origin. So that way the exact location of any point in the three-dimensional space can be found by following these steps, and it can be represented as the lengths that we must travel along each of these three axes in this form. Well, as a matter of fact, the parameters height, width and depth that I spoke of in the first place are just the x, y and z axes under different names. And that basically is what the Cartesian coordinate system is. So to determine the location of any single point in space, all you need to do is first choose a reference point and then choose the coordinate system. So that is called picking a frame of reference to determine whether something is moving or not. So in this case of the Cartesian coordinate system, all you need to do is choose any reference point, call it the origin, and then construct the axis, which is basically three mutually perpendicular lines. And the best part is that regardless of how you go, that is, choose which axis first, as long as you travel the exact same amount that pertains to that particular axis, you will still reach that particular point. So basically the location of any single object around you can be written as, well, something like that, which has x, y and z, that stands for the distance along the x-axis and the y-axis and the z-axis. There's also an important observation to make here. As I said, you could pick any point around you to be your reference point, but the thing is, based on what point you choose to be your reference point, you will have to construct a coordinate system by picking a frame of reference and all that. So based on where your reference point is, the distance along that along any of the axes that you'll have to travel to reach that point would change. And we consider any point to be moving with respect to the reference point if the distance between those 2 points changes over time. So then why did we consider the ball to be moving? Well, that's because we've been brought up our entire lives on the ground itself, and we're so used to seeing things on the ground that our brain simply doesn't wait for us to specify a particular reference point and then construct some sort of a coordinate system and then pick that as the frame of reference to determine whether something's moving or not. Instead, what it does is that it implicitly chooses a point on the ground to be our reference point and then choose a frame of reference such that it is stationary with respect to the ground, that anything that moves with respect to the ground is considered to be moving in our head just like that, because we don't explicitly choose a particular reference point. So that's the whole thing. It's basically an example of our brain trying to make us believe that something is right without any doubt, because it made a small assumption because of the way we've been thinking all this while, that it's just because we're so used to it, sort of like inertia of thinking. Well, yeah, so that's basically why most people thought that the ball was moving when all I did was just throw it, because I mean it is moving with respect to the ground, but then I never mentioned if it was moving with respect to the ground or say some moving vehicle. So even if I were to hold it like this, and it won't be moving with respect to the ground, but it could still be moving with respect to something else that's moving with respect to the ground. Yeah, so it all depends on the frame of reference that you choose. So if I'm holding this right here, right now, and picking my frame of reference to be some moving car, or say the sun, I mean the earth's moving with respect to the sun, so this ball itself is moving right now without me having to move it with respect to the ground. Give this a thought. Imagine you're born and brought up your entire life not on the ground, but in a vehicle that moves with respect to the ground. In that case, your brain would be so accustomed to that environment that by default, it would take the frame of reference to be a coordinate system with the origin in the vehicle itself. So your whole predefined idea of what is moving and what isn't will be different from anyone who is brought up on the ground. Then to you, the vehicle might not be the one that you consider to be moving, but the entire world around you might seem to be. Hey there, thanks for watching the video and hope you liked it. If you feel this video could be helpful to someone, then feel free to share the link with them. And if you need more details on what the word dimension means, then I suggest you have a look at this video. And in case you're new, then you could have a look at that video to know what this channel is all about. And if you're waiting for the next one, then click here to subscribe and stay tuned. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Yeah, I guess I should have just stuck to